Hey everyone, welcome to Next Gens, Transforming Our Future. My name is Sophie and I'm the Engagement Director with Rainforest Partnership and I live in Austin, Texas. I also have Emma here with me and she is also a Next Gen.
Hey everyone, I'm Emma. I'm the Engagement Coordinator at Rainforest Partnership and I also live in Austin, Texas. And Sophie and I are going to be your hosts this evening.
We want to thank all of you for watching this. We have some special and important content to share with y'all.
So, first on the docket, why are we talking about Next Gen?
Well, as Next Gens ourselves, we are committed to make a difference for our rainforests because the fact of the matter is, this is the climate and the planet that we are going to inherit.
And it is for this reason that we want to address this audience. We want change. We want to make a positive impact. And this is why we want to invite you to join us in moving forward and figuring out the next steps in achieving a better, more sustainable, cleaner future for all of us.
And that's also why we got involved. I personally got involved in volunteering at a nonprofit like Rainforest Partnership because this past year I was tired of feeling useless at all the negativity in the world and everything that was going on. So I decided to use my resources and find Rainforest Partnership and get involved. And it's been such a rewarding journey so far.
Yeah, I have a similar story. I wanted to get involved with anything that had to do with conservation. When I was a kid, I grew up at the beach and I would go swim in the tide pools and I would have fun with all the little sea anemones and sea urchins. And there were so many of them and sea slugs too. And over the years, as I would go to the beach, those things started disappearing. And I literally saw the degradation over the years of a place that I loved and that was near and dear to my heart. So I just knew that someday I had to do something to help change that.
I'm sure every one of you has your own story, so we're excited to bring you in and introduce you to our event this evening. We're going to meet the founder and CEO of Rainforest Partnership, who will discuss how she is engaging Next Gens in her organization. We will spotlight the movement, Gen Z for the Trees, before we announce RP's new program that's coming up. So stay tuned.
But first, we want to introduce you guys to some folks who are engaging with the next generations in their own work. And they will explain to you why you guys are such a vital component in not only protecting the world's rainforests, but in the fight against climate change. So let's start off with our first interview with Emma and Chelsea Toler.
Now we're going to focus on Next Gen involvement and engagement, and here to talk with us about that is Chelsea Toler Hoffman, the president of the Keep Families Giving Foundation and a woman who is passionate about launching a new generation of philanthropists. Hi, Chelsea.
Hi, so great to be here with you, Emma.
Yes, thank you for coming. So first off, please tell us about yourself. What is your story? How'd you get where you are today? And what is it that got you so involved and committed to philanthropy at such a young age?
Sure. So I was really fortunate to go to the University of Texas and then to St. Edward's University that allowed for me to work full-time and get my master's degree. And so I worked at a small arts nonprofit organization and learned how it was great to be able to combine my passions for writing and the nonprofit sector. After that, I joined a small but mighty team of 7 women that helped run Amplify Austin Day for our community, which raised millions of dollars for hundreds of nonprofits. And that was it. From there, I loved what it meant to see givers come together. I loved what it meant to see our community come together. I recently have transitioned into running my own family's foundation, as well as serving as a partner of Nova Impact, which brings next-gen impact investors and philanthropists and visionary and founders together. So that's a little bit about my journey. And more personally, my grandmother really modeled what selflessness meant. And when she passed away, she provided me the opportunity to take a gift and do what I wanted with it. And the foundation was a way that I could really, remember her and use it to inspire, especially other next-gen women, to learn what it means to give back.
That's amazing. That's really great. So could you talk more about the foundation? What's it all about? And what was your vision for Keep Families Giving?
Sure. So I did quite a bit of work figuring out what models I thought could be successful, what was something that, was missing in this space. I think, I was really fortunate to belong to a community called Nexus, which has a large number of us out of New York, and really talked to other women in this space and asked them, what's worked for you, what hasn't, how do you navigate family dynamics? And from, I would say, about 6 months of that, settled on the unique model in which we have a next gen advisory board made up of next gens that either run their own nonprofit or will be a part of their family office or foundation, or some of them are in the corporate space and have exited companies and are thinking about what they want to do with those dollars. So they actually make the grant recommendations and decide what initiatives that we take on. And they report directly to me and my family on that. So that's sort of an innovative model in that we believe that next gens need to be given the space to lead and to learn and to fail earlier on than just when wealth transfers.
Right, absolutely. That's really interesting and cool that y'all are doing that. How do you select people for the Next Gen Advisory Board?
Yeah, so we started so small. We were a group of, some of my best friends that I knew and had served on committees with. I think it was 6 of us around my kitchen table. And then together we've built a community of over 300 next gen. So it's been sort of an evolution, but I think, I was reminded you can really create movements and changes in this world when you start with a small group of committed people and friends that care about making the world a better place.
Definitely. And speaking of the changes in the world, what are some of the things that Keep Families Giving has done? Could you spotlight some of the things y'all have done?
Sure. So one of the most, I would say, probably impactful was we, prior to COVID, brought together about 300 philanthropists and impact investors and founders from around the world. We brought them to Austin, and NextGens care a lot about unique spaces. So we actually had part of the summit inside of CBRE and Google, and then had some very interesting underground roundtables in cave restaurants, and we had panels at a jazz club. So really, played with what it meant to be in inviting and warm and innovative spaces. And that was really great. We brought together so many different sectors and people to really align with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And how can we, whether you are funding companies, or you're having conversations about philanthropy within your family, or you're wanting to start companies that address some of these things that are so important, like gender equality and climate action and reducing inequalities in the world. So that was a great platform as folks have stayed in touch past that, as we've gone into COVID virtually, and a lot of them have done some really great projects together. So that's one story I always love to tell. The other one that's very next gen-y is I felt like giving real experience was important. So our family took a entity that had a for-profit arm and a nonprofit arm that was really struggling due to rent costs in Austin. And we rallied, I guess, about 30 next gens around it and held a really unique fundraiser and got enough dollars to the nonprofit organization to keep the jazz and the music literally alive in Austin, which is the music capital, live music capital of the world. So that was another great experience where we got to really take something tangible in our portfolio and allow next gens to be hands-on with that project.
Right, that's so cool. Yeah, could you also talk about the strategic impact cohort and some of the things that y'all do there in that space?
Yeah, absolutely. So our granting, or I should have mentioned this with the summit as well, we each are responsible for proposing projects and nonprofits, and then we come together around those grant decisions, which is really great because we call ourselves cause agnostic, which is also really different. We're focused on the people and what they care about. But what we learned was a lot of next gens were becoming increasingly more interested, not only in the philanthropy parts of creating impact, but also in investing and impact investing. And so a few of our advisory board members came together and decided, well, what if we sort of merge some of these networks? So what if we take my background and my experience in the philanthropy and family office space, and then my founding partner, Olivia Dell, and principal and directors, Sarah Aonen and Anne-Marie McComb. They brought together their backgrounds in the corporate space as well as the venture space to really form this impact education program where we were pulling in our mentors and people that we trusted together to have these conversations and tangible takeaways of how we can work together to create impact, both through investing, but also through philanthropy and also through innovation.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. So for an outsider looking in and doesn't really know what you mean by impact, how would you define impact and what does that mean to you?
Yeah, and you had kind of asked me about the strategic impact cohort, right? So SIC was sort of the passion project of 3 women that, you know, wanted to take what we see as impact, which I think it's really hard to define, but I see it as a gateway into bettering the world we want to live in. So for me, I saw impact happening through philanthropy. For Anne-Marie, she saw, you know, impact happening through the corporate sector and giving back and being involved in various nonprofit boards. For Olivia, it was investments and how you can leverage your investment into companies that are actively problem solving. So I think impact can be taken into our lives. For us, we've committed to impact both personally and professionally, which means we want to make sure that what we're doing is in alignment with making the world a better place, both through, you know, our personal initiatives in our time, but also with our careers.
Mm-hmm, definitely. So why the focus on next gens? Like, why are you passionate about bringing them into the giving space at this early point in their lives as opposed to in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and later on?
Well, because I am one, it's one part.
Right.
I think that for my personal journey, it was really hard. It was difficult to know where to go for resources. You know, I had an ability to do some giving, but, you know, I wasn't managing all of my family's giving yet. And I didn't really know what I was passionate about, or I certainly didn't know about various SEC rules and investment portfolios. I don't have a series, 63 license. So I think part of it was I just wanted to build a community that I saw could work together as we're learning through these challenges. So that was part of it. The other is I think that we're often left out of conversations when we can really make a difference. And I think whether it's, you know, within a nonprofit organization that is barely getting by and doesn't have time because, you know, we're not giving huge gifts yet, or, you know, it's a family and we're really not prepared enough to be making huge decisions. I feel like for us, having a peer community and sharing non-kin mentors in this space gets us ready for one of the largest wealth transfers the world has ever seen. So how can we make sure that we're prepared to take this on in a really big way? Right. And on climate, right, it's very clear what is happening. And to be honest, the very large challenges we have ahead of us. So the sooner we can get educated in, okay, how do we innovate in this space? How do we support these nonprofits that are doing this work? How do we get behind these companies? How do we give all forms of capital towards this? Because we're really out of time.
Definitely. Yeah, so what advice would you give to next gens who want to get involved in giving but don't know how to go about it, whether that's choosing a specific cause or organization or individual or collective action?
Yeah, I would say, it's different for everyone. Sometimes you have a really personal experience that gets you really motivated. For me, I've always been so passionate about women and girls. And so sitting on Connect Hers board and being on a board of all women and supporting, initiatives in that area was really personal and a passion area I wanted to pursue. So part of it is think about what you care about. The other thing I would say is don't be scared to reach out. Try communities, see, what fits for you, ask questions, ask your trust networks, find people in this space. And Emma, you're a great example of this, right? So, you're still in college, but you've identified a nonprofit that aligns with what you care about. And I think the more you try out, you could say, you know what, this area isn't for me, or this is what I want to dedicate my life to for right now. So I would say the advice I would have is reach out to your trust networks, try out communities you think that could be interesting, and don't be afraid to use your voice in this space because it matters.
Definitely, right. So this question may kind of reiterate some other things we've been talking about, but how can we understand how next gens are different in the way they look at the world, the things that matter to them, and the way they pick the causes and areas in which they want to give?
Yeah, we definitely have a tendency to be more hands-on. So I think, the expectation that we're not going to pay attention and, we'll just write a check to whatever and we're not going to volunteer. I think those days are behind us. I think we want to be involved. We want to make a real difference. The other thing I would say is we tend to love being social and doing things with friends. So how can we create and surround community around what we're doing?
Right. So what advice would you have for the next generations who want to make a difference, but they haven't discovered the difference between impact and activity?
Ooh, that's really interesting. I would say there's a transition that happens when you found something, and I don't use the word investment lightly, that you want to invest in. And I think a lot of times we're scared about talking about, I prefer to just give my time, or I prefer to just give my skills. And all of those things are very valuable. But whether you're giving 5 cents or you're giving $5 million, there's something that happens when you give a piece of your full self. So time, talent, treasure, we hear this a lot. But when that ecosystem of all that you can give in terms of capital comes together, that's when I think it's impact and transformation, not only for the organization or for the company, but also for you. I think that's when you've decided that this is so important to you and to the world that you're all in.
Right. Yeah. So last question here. Imagine you're looking out over an auditorium of a bunch of next gens. What would you say to them if you could pick one main thing to say?
Oh, I kind of hinted at this a little bit earlier, but I think what I would tell them is your voice and you and your ideas and what you bring to the table matters. And it may feel like sometimes that you're not ready and you're scared and you're fearful, but you have a community, whether it's me, it's you, it's Nyanta, it's Beth, there's so many people, especially around climate and climate action, that are going to be right alongside you. So don't be scared to get started. And also the other thing I would tell them is, I think I've seen a lot where we all try to be perfect. And if COVID has taught me anything, it's actually the failures and the challenges are what truly creates transformation and change. So don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to share those failures and those challenges, because that's how we get better as a next gen community.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for coming and speaking in our panel today. Next, we are going to shift to Sophia and Lucia to talk about impact.
You are involved with a lot of millennials and a lot of Gen Z audiences. Why do you think that it's important to include those audiences in the work that you do? And why do you think it's important that all the organizations that you work with involve those audiences?
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite fascinated by younger generations because I feel like there's this really interesting split where you either kind of run into a generation that's a little bit emotionally detached from a lot that's going on, and you sort of see that in a lot of the cultures that are built on social media. And then you have this entire like other culture that is the complete opposite, where they're like incredibly active, proactive. They're incredibly fiercely passionate about so many different things, but they're also a lot more vocal, and they, you know, we actually, because what am I saying? I'm also a millennial. we are much more vocal about what we don't find acceptable. And I think the best example is, you know, recently with the BLM movement, you know, a lot of companies were putting out these statements saying that they were for or against, and that, you know, they supported the BLM movement. And then you suddenly had this like wave of people, young people saying, but your company practices don't embody that, or like, hey, I worked for your company, that was not my experience at all. And so I think what's really fascinating about millennials, no matter what kind of reputation we get in relation to, you know, whatever, sensitivity, laziness, whatever, the reality is that we're not that generation. We are actually a generation that's quite passionate and vocal, and once we are understood and we're given purpose and we're given, you know, autonomy, and self-sovereignty to do the kinds of things that we are passionate about, I think we find a lot of momentum in that, and we lead to a lot of positive impact in that. And so I think it's an incredibly respectable generation that is a lot more, a lot less hypocritical about what they say they stand for. And I find that really powerful and a great influence for any organizational culture.
I totally agree. I think that the misunderstanding that often comes with millennials is that we are very individualistic and we are steadfast in our beliefs, but a lot of times that can come off as being stubborn and sometimes lazy. But I think that it just means that a lot of us are either holding out for what we believe in, or we move around a lot because things disappoint us easily, because we know what we're looking for and we know what we believe in and what we want to see too, which is a huge distinction to make.
It's weird because the criticism is often complacency, and yet it's actually born out of non-complacency. It's born out of like, you know, this isn't good enough for me, so I'm going to keep looking for what is, or I'm going to create what is, or I'm going to stand up for what is. And so I think it's actually complete non-complacency that, if you don't understand it as an organization, can have an unintended effect that leads to like lower productivity. But I think that if you are an organization that can tap into this kind of potential, then if you really understand that psychology, then I think you're in for like a wild ride, because I think, you know, the output is incredibly powerful and inspiring, and it's really proactive. Like, it really gets, you know, I always tell people that ask me, you know, how I buy sustainable products, because I'm very pro, you know, only buying sustainable products. Mm-hmm. And so they were asking me, they said, you know, but as a consumer, that must be really hard. And I'm like, actually, once you get used to it as a lifestyle, it's really not. And I'm a brand's like worst nightmare and then their dream customer, because I'm their worst nightmare if they don't live up to my expectations. I'm the worst nightmare if, you know, I do find them hypocritical or whatever. But then once I do find that brand that I love and that is really doing things right, then I'm their biggest advocate and I will recommend it to everyone. And all of these network effects that millennials and Gen Zers are so good at, because by instinct we were born in this technological generation, then, you know, we really understand these network effects and we can really lead to more powerful outcomes, you know, once we can really tap into these causes that give us purpose.
So another question that I have is, why do you think millennials and Gen Z audiences are so different from their predecessors in being critical of brands these days? Like, what changed?
I mean,
and why do you think
honestly,
we're not very we're not content to believe people or believe companies so easily? Like, we want to look for proof that they are sustainable, that they are coming from, you know, minority owned businesses, or they're treating their employees fairly. I mean, there's a whole myriad of things that we look for, but why do you think that has changed and that we are so much more critical than generations before us?
Yeah, you know, there's a couple different dynamics in play here, because I think this is a great question, by the way. And I think, you know, on the one hand, it's sort of like we're both like the benefactor, like the people that benefited, and also the victims of like the era of we don't care, right? Because essentially great wealth was built during this era where it was like, you know, exponential capitalism, and it was growing at no matter the cost. And there was very little globalization that was social in nature. So it's really hard for us to find out that there were issues, right? Like if we're thinking pre-social media, for you to find out that, you know, X company was violating human rights in a different country, it was actually, it required investigative journalism. And so the issues were much more invisible. And so I also think there's like something to be said about that we grew up in this era where like we benefited from the wealth that was created from this like incredible move and push towards capitalism, but at the same time we were sort of these issues were starting to come to light that it wasn't such a perfect system. And then enter social media, and suddenly it's unavoidable. It's everywhere you go, because, you know, you can be looking at a hashtag of, you know, related to absolutely nothing, you know, current events related, but suddenly a current event thing will happen because, you know, you have celebrities taking pictures to advocate for issues, you know? And so, and that's great, because at the same time it's creating this level of visibility, but we've become so overwhelmed by it that there's two choices, right? And you go down this like apathy path, which a lot of our generation has gone through, this like, you know, I want to watch Keeping Up with, you know, whatever, or I want to watch like TMZ or Real Housewives or whatever, and like completely disconnect. And then you've got a larger segment of the population that's saying, this is unpalatable to me. And we've sort of tried to foster over time through, you know, some education system or some parental systems, this notion of like, you can do what you set your mind to, you know, you do have a voice. There is this component of empowerment that we have been granted, that, you know, the combination of those two things of saying, I have the power to use my voice, and at the same time, here is something I find unpalatable, that combination makes it so that we have almost like no choice but to act. Like it doesn't allow for us to really live happily knowing that this is a factor. And I think, you know, to a certain extent, there's also this notion of, you know, comfort. And once we've reached, you know, our parents, if they had comfort, they were able to afford their own house and so on and so forth, then like you start looking at all of the other social issues. And, you know, there's a huge rise in inequality, which means that even the economic part is fragile right now. But I think we did live in an era where like, you know, the internet bubble was comfortable for a lot of people. And so certain things became easy to take for granted. And now that you have that, you sort of look at what's underneath that and you say, well, it came at this cost, right? And you can see this in policy all the time. Like, for example, they say at one point or other, communism works until it's stable economy. And then once the economy is stable, people start asking for their freedoms because there's nothing to worry about on the economic sense. So now they're looking at their freedoms. And so it's these cycles of human, I guess, or societal stability and instability that are fostered. And it's very natural for us to now be on this path of like, there was economic growth, and now we're confronted by the fact that it came at a cost. And our generation is the one that's had to see that cost sort of thrown at its face all over, because no matter where you go on the internet, you see it. It's sort of like it makes it inevitable that we are in this position of needing to act to change it, and being more demanding and being more vocal about what we see, because these are the cards that we're dealt, generationally speaking, you know?
Yeah.
Like the world is literally on fire.
Yeah.
You know?
I have thought about this a lot, and you just answered that in such a better way than I could have. So thank you so much. So I wanted to ask you about your work with Rosie and the Gen Z team and what you guys are doing. I don't want to say anything. I'll let you explain it.
So I am really proud to be on the Rainforest Partnership board because of this notion of the ability to sort of look at a generation that says, you know, we want to do things in a way that's true to us, and we want to be more bold about the way we go about things. And Rainforest Partnership has respected that quite a bit and has given Gen Z quite its own autonomy to build these projects. And Rosie's doing such an excellent job. So we're working on, you know, one particular project that I'm fiercely proud of, which relates to data collection. And, you know, one of the bigger challenges in trying to save rainforests and regenerate them is that we need to know exactly what's happening. And that's not something that you can tell by just looking at a rainforest. And so, you know, what are ways in which we can understand what's happening? Well, acoustic actually is a really powerful thing. And you also want to look at the living species in it, and you want to look at like growth, and you want to look at all of these sort of different data points to paint like a full picture of what is really happening in this rainforest and how bad is deforestation and degradation, how bad is natural degradation in areas that are uninhabited. So we really need to understand more about these ecosystems, and we need to do it in a way that allows for organizations that are working on climate action projects, that are working on research, that are working on all of these new technologies that can help us regenerate faster. We need to do it in a way that's easy for them to sort of leverage all of these raw data sets and then say, here's our here's like all this raw data on the rainforest, and they can say, here's our understanding of all of this data, and here's something that can help address it. And so, that's something to us that's really powerful. And then at the same time, what we want to do is make sure that the indigenous communities that are living and protecting and doing that daily work of protecting and regenerating the rainforest are also getting some form of, upward economic mobility, as they should receive, because this is work that is actually essential for the world, and they don't get remunerated like it's essential to the world. And so, we sat down and we said, we want to create this like data marketplace. And so that's what we're working on. We're looking at new ways in which we can capture data in uninhabited parts of the rainforest, how we can work with local indigenous communities to collect both passive and active forms of data, where, some of it is reported by people, some of it is captured through, a bracelet that is capturing humidity and moisture data. We're looking at ways in which we can we can record sounds that are happening all around without necessarily disturbing the animals that live within it. And so we're looking at all of these different ways and new technologies in which we can really get a sense of what's happening. And then we're saying, here it is for the world. Let's use it to collectively create these strategies that are going to help us protect and regenerate the rainforest. And so I'm really fiercely proud of that project. And, it's actually great because Rosie's working on it, with a couple of people on the Rainforest Partnership side, and they're all next gen. And on my side, I've actually also put up a team that's really young. And so on my side, it's, I think there's a couple of Gen Zers on the team, and there's also some millennials as well. So it really is a youth-led project. And I'm really fascinated by where it's going, specifically because of the precedent it will set in terms of fair data. And we do live in this world where everything is turned into data, and unfortunately, no one is remunerated for it, despite the value that they add to the marketplace. And so I think, having Rainforest Partnership stand up and say, this indigenous community is helping us collect it, they should receive a reward from it. And you're using this data, then use it and pay for it, and then let that fund go back into the place that it came from, which is in this case, the rainforest. And so the respect for data sovereignty and data rights, I think, is precedent setting. And I think the project is super exciting for what it could do to help us really understand this ecosystem that's been around for so long, and yet we still seem to sort of have these big, large gaps of knowledge of. And so I'm super excited about that project. I could go on and on. You're gonna have to stop me.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've been in a few of the calls when you're talking to Rosie about this project, and I'm just always in awe to listen to you guys and what you guys are doing. I think it's so incredible and so important. And I mean, I'm just proud to be a part of an organization that this is a branch of. I think that I just think it's so cool. So I have one more question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you think that, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but do you think that involving our audiences, next gen audiences, in projects like these are important because we bring new ideas to the table, because there's a lot of times that we haven't been told no to certain ideas, so we just kind of propose crazy ideas that end up working, right? I mean, is there a part of that in this project with the data collection?
Totally. I think it's interesting because there's somewhat of a balance in saying, like, I usually at least our design process at Emerge is usually like, give me the moonshot. Like, tell me if you had your way in absolutely every aspect, what is it that this project would look like? And then we work our way back into what's feasible and what we might be actually able to create. So we've actually we've designed new technology or reverse engineered technology to work in like weird contexts and situations. But that was only possible because, again, we did have this notion of like, why not?
Yeah.
Right? Why wouldn't we be able to capture acoustic data from an uninhabited area in the middle of nowhere? Like, yes, why not?
Yeah.
And so I mean, that's definitely, I think, a generational, it's because it's also, we don't get bogged down with methodologies a lot. I know that there's like, you know, older generations were really struck on process that made things effective and scalable and consistent. And I think that's really important. That said, I think we've reached this era of global issues that are so complex that they don't just require new solutions, they require new approaches to designing those solutions. And this is where there's a lot of value in like youth and understanding that yes, they have a less structured or more abstract way of thinking that is conducive to you sort of questioning some of the processes that we've used historically and figuring out where there are inherent flaws in what we've proposed or where it like holds the ambition back. And so there's definitely something to be said about that. I also think, you know, the energy and the commitment and the purpose-driven component is really important. You know, there's something to be said about someone that does something with purpose because the degree to which they'll do it is much higher quality. And so I really like to work with people that sort of see some of the projects that we're working on as like that unpalatable problem that they can't, you know, they can't go to sleep without thinking about. And once you've sort of nailed that project for them, the output is just incredible. And I think, you know, you can see it in Rosie when she gets so excited about this project. And she's talking data and you're just watching her and she's so excited about it. And I'm just like, you know, this is awesome because that's exactly the kind of, you know, purpose-filled passion that leads to really precise way of doing things because you know you're going to do your research, you know they're going to do everything that they need to do to make sure that this project works because they live and breathe it, you know, and that's the kind of passion that younger generations sort of feel. And it's, you know, something that sometimes we get picked on about because we're so passionate that it's just kind of like it emanates, right? But that's inherently what you need in order to try to address some of these more complex issues. So I think there's something to be said about what you're saying in relation to abstract thinking and creativity and in saying like, you know, non-complacency or at least non-bias toward like a specific manner of doing things. And I think the other side of that is looking at it from the problem or the institutional perspective is saying, you know, we have these methods and we've been using them for years and clearly they don't work because look at where we're at. And so the real trick is going to be balancing, you know, what there is in value because there is a lot of value to be had here. There is importance in consistency and in process and in institutional memory and things like that. But where's that balance between all of this and all of that sort of moonshotting that youth do so well? And so that's sort of, if you're an organization that can do that, or if you are a young person that finds an organization that really has built that culture into itself, then I think, you know, that's a place where you can thrive.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, you're amazing. Thank you so much. I think
Thanks for having me.
That's a perfect note to end on. Thank you for speaking with me. You're so much more well-spoken than I am. I really appreciate you. I always enjoy our conversations.
Likewise.
And yeah, thank you for all the work that you do, not just with Rainforest Partnership, but among all organizations and just everything.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I've fallen in love with the RP, you know, Next Gen team, and what you're all doing is really incredible. And I'm really proud of it. And I'm very proud to sit on the board. And so this is a super exciting week for us because, you know, highlighting climate issues is just essential. And as, you know, as we're sort of faced with incredible degradation, forest fires, and just this like quality of air that is suffocating even, I think, you know, it's the one moment in time where we can really say it's not just preserving the world's natural ecosystems, but rainforests in particular have like a key role to play. And so I'm super excited about Climate Week and everything that Rainforest Partnership has planned, everything you guys have worked so hard to plan. And so, you know, I look forward to participating as much as I can in the event.
Thank you so much. And I totally agree. All right. Well, thank you again, Lucia. Have a wonderful night.
Bye, you too.
So we've spoken with two amazing Next Gens who are revolutionizing the field of impact and engagement by working with other Next Gens. Next, we will look at how CEO and founder Nyata Spellman engages Next Gens in her nonprofit Rainforest Partnership. I'll pass it on to Amalia, project coordinator at RP.
To round it out, we will finish this segment by speaking about Next Gen involvement within Rainforest Partnership with none other than its visionary founder, CEO Nyata Spellman. Hi, Nyata.
Hi, Amalia. It's an honor to be with all of you that are so incredibly inspiring.
Right, it's an honor having you here. So could you maybe tell us about yourself and about how Rainforest Partnership came to be?
Yes, I am the founder and CEO of Rainforest Partnership. So I have this deep, incredible privilege to work with incredible human beings from all sorts of walks of life to come together to change the current trajectory that we've been on for far too long, to take our planet to a different place, one that serves not just all of humanity, but everything else that coexists with us, regardless of where you come from, who you are, how much money you have, what language you speak, or what culture, or what religion or country of origin you represent.
How do you think that in this trajectory that you speak about, why is it important for next gen, like to have next gen involvement within RP?
So in the last 10 years, in the last 5 years, each year, each month that passes, it has become inevitable that we need to act and we need to respond. And as we get to that place, I think it becomes indefensible to not act and do something. And who better than the next generation that's coming into play? Next generation is the majority of consumers, the majority of the workforce, and the older generations are relying on this generation to be successful. Now, here's the thing. We didn't go out and say, oh, we must have next gen, or we must have diversity, and we must have all these things. For Rainforest Partnership, it is so integrated into our DNA that it just is. We've always had people speaking all sorts of different languages and from all cultures and originating from different countries, and people who had come from wealth and people who did not. And we've had actually three next gen board members that have been in their 30s. One of our founding board members, in fact, now that I reflect back, and then we've had two others in their 30s, and one of them was in their 20s, 29. They turned 30 while they were on our board. So if you think about it that way, that is not something we're chasing or trying to say, oh, we have to have an initiative to be a diverse board, or an initiative to be a diverse team, or have an initiative that we must bring people on the ground that are team members. No, we've always had that. Unlike most other people in our space, we've always been diverse. And so that we've had representation from every populated continent.
And one last thing, could you maybe tell us what you would like to tell the next gens, like a short message that you would like them to hear from you?
So don't dwell on the fact that people who came before you messed it up and did not take responsibility or did not do what they needed to do. To blame or point fingers or to do woe is me is not going to get us where we need to. And so I would say, find within yourselves, within the networks you belong to and are in, and lead in the ways that you can, knowing what you know, and collectively, let's go and do this together. It is going to take every one of us that is able to respond to the biggest crisis that we're facing as humanity. And so the more of us that can join together in every which way that we best can is what we must do. And I am, for me, Gen Z for the Trees are initiatives of the young ones. When I say young ones, they're just incredibly inspiring. Our trajectory and our destiny is not set for total climate doom. We still have the ability to change that. The planet is resilient, and the forests are resilient, and there is a way to bring them back. And same with our oceans, and same with all sorts of life all around us. And so let's go do it. That's my invitation.
Thank you very much, Nyanta. That was wonderful.
Well, thank you so much for doing what you're doing and everybody else that's watching with us.
As you may have gathered from that most recent interview with Amalia and Nyanta, the Rainforest Partnership is committed to involving and engaging Next Gen in their work. And one of the most notable examples of that might be the Gen Z for the Trees team. Check it out.
Well, hi. It's so nice to meet you. I'm Fernanda. I'm an engagement coordinator at RP.
My name is Rosie, or Roshan, but you can call me Rosie. I am 18 years old. I'm a junior at UT Austin, so I'm in Austin, Texas.
Just to dive in, a question that I had was, you started a program, Gen Z for the Trees, here at RP. Just if you would like to explain, like, what is this program and what inspired you with the idea?
I can tell you about the mission of Gen Z for the Trees is in line with RP's mission is to achieve net zero deforestation by 2030 by building a global coalition of youth who work together to take action against deforestation from all different angles. And so we have 3 different pillars that we work with, basically: educate, inspire, and change. And the educate pillar is there because it's really important for Gen Zers who are, like high schoolers or college students to understand certain things about rainforest conservation and like the causes of deforestation and all the like economic and political players and things that go into shaping why deforestation happens and what we can do to reverse it. So these are sorts of like climate science is not necessarily taught in schools, and these like real world political mechanisms are not necessarily taught in schools, especially to younger folks. So that's something that we want to be using our social media platform to help educate people about. So we've been using Instagram to put out some like quizzes over Instagram about like the Amazon rainforest and the causes behind the fires in the Amazon, and then all about palm oil, so like its physical properties and why it's actually one of the most efficient like vegetable oils to farm. So that's like, we shouldn't totally ban palm oil, we should find ways to grow it sustainably instead of switching to other forms of oil, because that will take up more land and will actually probably do more harm than good. So that's all the educate pillar. And then the inspire part is speaking to another need of Gen Z is that a lot of our generation struggles with like depression and eco-anxiety and feeling helpless and hopeless, because a lot of us are, not even old enough to vote in the United States. And a lot of us aren't like in positions of like decision-making power. So of course we feel really sort of like upset about how governments have been misusing their power and just like not taking care of basic like people and planet's well-being, and that all leads to this sort of like psychological problem where when we continue seeing the negative headlines, because like negative headlines are generally what sell and what journalists like media corporations, not just journalists, will tend to like get more attention through. So like negative headlines are definitely more common than like positive news, even though there is a lot of positive work being done for climate mitigation and related to rainforest conservation, or like, any other environmental initiatives like ocean cleanups and whatnot. So our inspire pillar is to basically change the narrative on climate change by empowering Gen Zers, first by allowing them to envision a better future, because a lot of the media we consume is like, if you think about fiction and like creative media that we consume, a lot of it is sort of dystopian or like cyberpunk and things like that. So part of the vision that we're bringing is sort of like a solar punk, utopian, optimistic, just a brighter, like hopeful vision for the future. And then the change part of it, or the empower part, is allowing people to take action more efficiently and conveniently and really make the biggest impact with their time, because all of us are super busy. Like high school and college is a really stressful time for people, or middle schoolers and recent college graduates as well. So we wanted to bring together all the resources that we can into a single hub, so that when people find us on like the internet, they can access a lot of different information and also direct their friends there for whatever their questions are about different things.
Mm-hmm.
collective action is necessary, and like green consumerism is not going to be enough to save us because it won't push the status quo far enough. But on the other hand, it's important to know that everyone's individual choices do add up. So don't give up because your individual choices do matter, because you are an entire person, and you consume so much over your lifetime or even in a single year, and those choices do have an impact on the world that we're living in and that we're going to keep living in for decades more. And so the first thing is like, don't discount the power that you as an individual have. And the second thing is, don't isolate yourself from all of your friends and your whole community, because if we work together, we can accomplish so much.
That's a great message. As a Gen Zer myself, I feel like that's something that I've tried to be more cognizant of too. But yeah, I think that's an incredible thing that you're doing with Gen Z for the Trees, and a great message to share with people as well.
And all of this leads us to the announcement of our newest initiative that we are so excited to share with you. So if you feel pumped up from listening to our amazing speakers today and you want to make a difference, look no further.
The Morpho Fellowship offers an exciting and unique opportunity to young adults who want to develop specific career skills and engage with volunteers and professionals at one of the world's top-rated nonprofits, all while learning about and protecting our world's precious rainforests.
So we've talked to you, and now we want to talk with you. Let's connect. Go to the link at the bottom of Rainforest Partnership's New York Climate Week page to indicate your interest in the Morpho program and stay up to date on the latest. If you have any questions about the program, feel free to email us at morpho@rainforestpartnership.org.
We hope you're inspired and ready to get in the game, and we look forward to hearing from you soon.